The Webway is an ancient and labyrinthine subspace network which was originally created by the mysterious Xenos race known as the Old Ones. This network of tunnels and conduits, which would eventually come to be inherited by the Eldari, allows those who utilize it to not only travel across the vast expanse of the galaxy at incredible speeds, but to do so whilst avoiding the inherent risks that are associated with warp travel. Many races, such as humanity and the Orcs, will utilize warp drives in order to plunge their vessels into the Immaterium for the purpose of traveling faster than the speed of light, and as a result risk becoming stranded or becalmed within the depths of the warp or assaulted by demons and other such incorporeal creatures. By contrast, Webway travel is typically free of such hazards, due to the Webway itself being constructed from psychically sensitive materials designed to both resist and repel the energies of the warp. However, with the Webway existing in the veil between both the material and immaterial realms, the energies of the warp are indeed capable of flooding certain sections of the network should any of its tunnels be breached. Thankfully, however, this in itself is considered to be an incredibly rare occurrence, and such compromised sections are often collapsed in order to prevent warp entities from infesting the entire Webway network. Some of these tunnels will be barely able to accommodate a single vessel comparable in size to a light aircraft, while others are large enough for armadas, flotillas, and in some cases, even entire planets. At some point prior to the Great Crusade, possibly even preceding the events of the Terran Unification Wars, the Emperor of Mankind would learn of the existence of the Webway, sowing the seeds for what would become, arguably, his greatest work, the Terran Webway Project. The Emperor intended to utilize the Webway to not only allow humanity to travel across the galaxy swiftly and safely, bypassing the inherent perils that are linked to warp travel, but more importantly, to begin severing humanity's connection to the warp entirely, and in turn weaken the malevolent entities known as the Chaos Gods. The Emperor believed that without humanity's exposure to the warp, the ruinous powers would be deprived of the various emotions and beliefs that granted them the bulk of their power and sustenance. In conjunction with his Imperial Webway, the Emperor intended to guide humanity towards its eventual evolution into a psychic species similar to that of the Eldari, although how the Emperor had planned to do so while severing the species from the warp remains unclear. The Emperor would begin construction of the Terran Webway within the depths of the Imperial Palace, after discovering a piece of ancient Eldari technology upon Terra, which would come to be incorporated into the structure known as the Golden Throne. To aid in the construction of new tunnels, corridors, and pathways throughout the Webway, the Emperor established an entirely new caste of tech priests known as the Enecta Concilium, or as they were less formally known, the Unifiers. However, since these man-made segments of the Webway were not constructed from the same psychosensitive material utilized by the Old Ones, the Emperor was forced to utilize his own phenomenal psychic gifts in order to shield them from the attentions of demons. Following the events of the Ulanor campaign, the Emperor would retire from the Great Crusade in order to focus exclusively upon his Webway project, leaving Horus, the Primarch of the Lunar Wolves and newly named War Master of the Imperium, to command the armies of the Imperium in his stead, although the Primarchs themselves remained unaware of the Emperor's great work. While the Webway project was proceeding at a phenomenal pace, it would ultimately be undone by Magnus the Red, the Primarch of the Thousand Suns. In an attempt to warn the Emperor about Horus's impending betrayal, Magnus would use his sorceress abilities to send an astral projection of himself through the warp towards Terra. However, the Primarch, after unknowingly making a bargain with the Chaos God, Tzeentch, would create a breach within the Imperial Webway, allowing scores of demonic entities to begin their assault upon the Terran Webway Gate, while simultaneously causing irreparable damage to the Webway project itself. This series of events would not only lead to the war within the Webway, but would also force the Emperor to remain upon the Golden Throne as he attempted to not only harness its now rampant, uncontrollable energies, but also prevent the warp tear that had been created by Magnus from enveloping Terra completely. The Emperor, enraged by Magnus's actions, which also saw the Primarch breaking the terms laid out within the Edict of Nicaea, a decree forbidding both the Primarchs and the Legionae Astartes from utilizing any psychic abilities that they may possess, would dispatch Leman Russ of the Space Wolves to bring Magnus back to Terra in chains in order to stand trial for his crimes. However, Russ's orders would be intercepted by a now corrupted Horus, who would instead order for Russ to destroy Magnus and his legion, leading to the burning of Prospero. But what if Magnus had not destroyed the Emperor's great work? What if the Imperial Webway Project had been successfully completed? For the purpose of this hypothesis, we will assume that the events leading up to and including the Horus Heresy itself never occurred, and focus exclusively on events regarding a completed and fully functional Terran Webway, allowing humanity to utterly circumvent the dangers of warp travel. One possibility that may occur is that the Navis Nobilite, an ancient pre-imperial organization comprised of abhumans known as Navigators, may attempt to instigate their own rebellion against the Imperium. It is thanks to the natural abilities of Navigators that ships are able to traverse through the depths of warp space with any degree of safety and accuracy, thanks to these abhumans sporting a third eye that allows them to see the very tides of the warp. Because Navigators were a necessity for any viable form of long-distance, faster-than-light travel for Imperial vessels, the Navis Nobilite, and in particular their leader, the Patanova, enjoyed both great power and political influence throughout the Imperium. If the Emperor had completed his Webway project, then the Navigators would immediately become obsolete. With this ever-impending fear of obsolescence, it wouldn't be unreasonable to assume that the Navis Nobilite would attempt a rebellion or coup against the Emperor, or possibly even attempt to sabotage the Webway itself in a desperate last-ditch attempt to retain what little power and authority that they had left. This latter idea isn't entirely unfounded, as during the course of the Horus Heresy, as detailed within the novel Path of Heaven, the Patanova of the Nobilite would indeed attempt such an action. At some undetermined point in time, the Emperor would discover a piece of technology that bore a striking similarity to that of the Golden Throne, which would be incorporated into a space station designated Dark Glass. The Patanova of the Navis Nobilite would somehow come to learn of its existence, resulting in a vassal sworn to House Ashelu named Vale being instructed to destroy this twin to the Golden Throne, believing that such technology was indeed a threat to the power of the Navigators. Vale would succeed in detonating a pair of vortex charges that resulted in the destruction of the Dark Glass Station, despite the best efforts of the White Scar Stormseer, Tagata Yasuge, who sought to prevent such an action. With this in mind, it's perfectly feasible to assume that the Navis Nobilite would attempt to sabotage the Terran Webway along with the Golden Throne in a similar manner. Whether such attempts would ever prove fruitful is another matter entirely, given that the development of the Terran Webway began beneath the Imperial Palace, and as such would more than likely see the golden-clad warriors of the Legio Custodes standing sentinel over it. That being said, however, it is admittedly possible that the Navis Nobilite could attempt to sabotage a number of Webway gates that existed outside of Terra itself, such as the gateway documented to exist upon Luna. Another possibility that could occur should the Emperor's Webway project be completed is that such events could see an increase in conflict between the Imperium and the Eldari. As mentioned earlier, the Eldari would come to inherit the Webway from their creators, the Old Ones, following the culmination of a great war between the Old Ones and the Necrontyr Empire, known as the War in Heaven. The Eldari would come to utilize the Webway exclusively for obtaining faster-than-light travel, and prior to the collapse of the Eldari Dominion, would even begin to establish a number of port cities within its depths, including that of Kumora, the realm of the Drukhari. If humanity had also begun to make use of this subspace network, then this could result in a number of skirmishes or even outright war being fought between the Eldari and the Imperium for control of the Webway. The Eldari would no doubt view humanity's use of the Webway as an infestation of their territory, while the Imperium in turn would likely view such hostile behavior from the Xenos as being little more than a pathetic attempt at stymieing Imperial progress. But one of, if not the biggest question to arise in regards to the Imperial Webway being completed is what would become of the Astronomicon. The Astronomicon is a psychic beacon that serves as a figurative lighthouse for ships journeying through the depths of warp space. While the Astronomicon was initially created as a conduit to allow the Emperor to generate a self-sustaining psychic signal with his immense godlike powers, it would eventually come to be fueled by a chorus of over 10,000 psykers following the Emperor's interment into the Golden Throne. However, if the Imperium utilized the Webway to achieve faster than light travel, then the Astronomicon would appear to become obsolete. But was the Astronomicon designed purely to act as a temporary measure, or did the Emperor have a secondary, long-term purpose for it in mind? As detailed within the novel The First Wall, Malcador the Sigillite would begin to speculate that the Astronomicon, should the Webway project have been successful, could have been employed as, for lack of a better term, a psychic weapon, which the Emperor could theoretically utilize to cleanse the warp, purging it of the malevolent entities that inhabit it.
What if that psychic power was used by the Emperor rather than protected? If our base emotions feed the dark powers, what of our common humanity? Dawn wrestles with the logistics of waging war across a continent-sized fortress city. I contend with the implications of a battle that rages over the boundless realms of the immaterial. If we cannot stifle the gods' power in the warp, then what better means to defeat them than to channel it away? Or perhaps, given sufficient psychic energy, could the Emperor weaponize the Astronomicon? Rather than light the warp, could he purge it?
If Malcador's speculations are indeed accurate, and that the Emperor could utilize his immense psychic abilities to effectively pacify the warp, then not only could the Emperor channel his own energy into such a project, but could potentially have done so in conjunction with a vast choir of psykers to supplement the Emperor's strength. While the very notion of purging the warp entirely of demons and other such warp entities may seem somewhat absurd, there is a precedent for such a possibility. The novel Talon of Horus details that within the depths of the warp rift known as the Eye of Terror, within a region known as the Eleusinian Veil, there exists a number of worlds that are continuously bathed in the Astronomicon's light. These worlds, known as the Radiant Worlds, are often avoided by the majority of demonic creatures due to the light of the Astronomicon, known to those that dwell within the eye as the Fire Tide, causing unimaginable agony to any warp entity exposed to it. As such, if the Emperor was able to weaponize the Astronomicon to act as, for want of a better term, a psychic EMP, then it is indeed possible that a high number of warp-spawned creatures could indeed be erased from existence. After all, it has been widely documented that the Emperor's power is indeed capable of permanently slaying many different kinds of demon, although some, such as Dracnien, appear to be beyond the Emperor's ability to destroy. While it would certainly appear to be unlikely for such a weapon to be capable of destroying the Chaos Gods themselves, it is certainly feasible to assume that the Emperor could weaken them just enough so that they may no longer prove to be a threat to humanity. But since the Imperial Webway was never completed, thanks to the actions of Magnus the Red, we will never know for certain just what could have been. What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.